here. We'll do that. And hand it over to Erin, who agreed to present today. I'll let her lay out where she's going to go with that. And yeah, really appreciate that you putting the effort into doing a presentation and also bringing some of your colleagues along. This is fantastic. Thank you very much. And so yeah, all you. Oh, and you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I lost the Zoom meeting. Yeah, good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk at this. And it's really exciting to see everybody here from all over the world. I was going to talk a little bit, or I was asked to talk a little bit about our region and the region that CIRC represents. So I work for Chugach Regional Resrouce Commission, and we work in South Central Alaska in Prince William Sound and the Lower Kenai Peninsula, and serve 7 tribes in that region. So I've got kind of a very basic overview of our region, and I welcome questions. I tried to stick to what I thought would be relevant to some of the work that we're doing with this project. So looking at how people live, work, and play out on the water and on the landscape throughout the Chugach region. And I will go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Oh, that's why I couldn't. That's when I lost the thing. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Awesome. So this picture here is Port Graham, which is one of the communities we serve on the Lower Kenai Peninsula. It is one of our more remote communities. It's off the road system, and so the only way to get there is by boat or by plane. It's about 200 people, just short of that. So just to kind of give you a sense of place and what this amazing landscape looks like. So about Chugach Regional Resrouce Commission, we are an intertribal fish and wildlife commission. We were founded in 1984 by the 7 tribes of the Chugach region to essentially act as natural resource managers and provide that service to our tribes. We have 7 tribes that we represent or that we serve. Those include the native village of Chuniga, native village of Eyak, the native village of Nanwalek, native village of Port Graham, the Ktuchik Native Tribe, which is located in Seward, Alaska, the native village of Tititlik, and the Valdez Native Tribe. And our mission is to promote tribal sovereignty and to protect the subsistence lifestyle of our tribal members through the development and implementation of tribal natural resource management programs. To assure the conservation, sound economic development, and stewardship of natural resources in the traditional territory of the Chugach region. And then we are mostly based remotely around various communities throughout South Central Alaska, but we do have our Alutiiq Pride Marine Institute facility as well in Seward, where we do shellfish enhancement and shellfish and fishery research. And that's that building. This is Seward that you can see right here, in that circled building down on the bottom is our Marine Institute. We're right next door to the University of Alaska Fairbanks Marine Research Station down there, and just down the street from the Sea Life Center, for any of you who are familiar with Seward. So this is our region, and I just wanted to acknowledge the people and the land that they have occupied with our land acknowledgement. I do apologize. I'm going to skip over the Sukshtun in this. I'm still learning the language, and so I don't want to mispronounce it. But we, the Chugach Regional Resrouce Commission, acknowledge the land and waters of our people, the traditional homelands, for over 10,000 years, what we call the Chugach region. The Chugach region includes over 5,000 miles of coastline, over 50 named islands, and over 20,000 square miles of mountains. Today, we have over 1,000 tribal members living in Chuniga, Eyak, Nanwalek, Port Graham, Seward, Tititlik, and Valdez, including Whittier and our oldest traditional village, Nuchek. These communities are found within the Lower Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, and Lower Copper River area. We survived by the ocean and beach. We also acknowledge the space and land CERC utilizes for our Marine Institute in Seward, the ancestral land of the Chugach Native tribe. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Alutiiq and Sugpiaq people. And so this, as I mentioned, this is the traditional territory of the Eyak and the Sugpiaq people of our region. And on this map, you can see all of our communities, all 7 of them. We've got down in the lower Kenai, Port Graham and Nanwalek, Katuchik or Seward in Resurrection Bay, Chiniga out in Prince William Sound, to Titlik and Valdez, and native village of Eyak located in Cordova. And then we've also got Nuchek on this map, which is it's a traditional, one of the oldest traditional villages, and also where there's still an annual summer camp that takes place every year. The Sugpiaq and Eyak people, as I mentioned, have been here for 10,000 years in their traditional territories. This map that you see here is a language map for all of Alaska. And when you zoom in, you can see that our territory and the region that CERC covers aligns really closely with the traditional language and culture territories of the Sugpiaq and the Eyak people here in South Central Alaska. This has traditionally been a melting pot of a region. There's been historically a lot of trade going on and many cultures coming together because this is such a resource-rich region, especially the oceans. Traditional lifestyles have been focused strongly around harvesting of traditional resources and passing that knowledge down through generations. So this image that you see here is an image that CERC actually produced a couple of years ago. It shows the most important subsistence resources or subsistence traditional foods in our region. And it also shows them the way that they're harvested, with spring starting on the left-hand side of this image and moving through summer, fall, and winter. And so this is the landscape and the annual kind of cycle that people in our region have traditionally centered their lives around. And I'm just going to read, I know it's really hard to read some of this writing because it's pretty small, so I'm just going to read that out loud for you. We titled this poster, Our Way of Living is Best. And to the Alutiiq people, subsistence is life. There is no easy way to translate the word subsistence into the Alutiiq language. Westerners often think of subsistence as the process of obtaining and eating wild foods, an alternative to buying groceries. This definition, however, fails to capture the complexities of living off the land. Collecting wild foods is not simply an economic act, but a central component of social and spiritual life. Through hunting, fishing, and gathering, Alutiiq people experience and express native identity. They explore their deep and enduring connection to the land. They care for their families and communities. They celebrate and sustain life. Subsistence is also a birthright, a way of living passed down from ancestors that has sustained generations. While not a literal translation of the word subsistence, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this, but the asirpiartuq, Our Way of Living is Best, expresses these many connections. The Gulf of Alaska, including Prince William Sound and Lower Cook Inlet, is one of the richest and biologically productive ecosystems on the planet. A local saying is, when the tide is out, the table is set. And, oops, I didn't mean to skip that. With that, I wanted to turn it over to, I'll start with Raven and pass it on to Michael if you want to talk a little bit about subsistence harvests and kind of what you do with your and where you go with your traditional to gather your traditional foods.
Yeah, so I definitely speak for more of the Eyak territory people versus everybody in the region, but just first and foremost, subsistence doesn't just happen, within so many, like so close to your home. Everybody in the region usually travels quite a distance for subsistence. For example, When we go moose hunting, we travel 20 to 40 miles outside of Cordova on the Copper River Delta. Same with salmon harvesting. We go out on the mouth of the river, of the Copper River, to catch our salmon harvest. For deer hunting, we travel to the outside islands, Hinchinbrook, Hawkins. Seal hunting, we go, out into Orca Inlet up towards Titlik, which is, approximately the same distance, about 2 hours, an hour away from Cordova present. And, clams as well. You go out around the corner into Orca Inlet, and berries, you go out again 20 miles. So we're really all over the area. We're all over the region when we subsist. We know specific places that home specific resources that we go to for that take. We know the halibut spots, and that's all knowledge that's shared and passed from generation to generation, and going out and using and finding the resources. So really, basically, the whole I just always say, like, the whole region is our store. You go out and it's like you're going down the aisle, where your items are on the aisle, but instead you're going out on a boat or driving out or wherever to go pick your resources to bring home and package and either eat that day or put in your freezer, which is a lot different than subsistence is a lot different than just like regular consuming food anywhere else in the world. You can go to the store and get fresh produce. You don't get that here. It takes about every week or so we get fresh produce in, and that's not necessarily fresh. They buy it from Anchorage, and then that takes another week to get here. And even to Anchorage, that's not even fresh. And when we harvest our subsistence, we're not just harvesting it for that day or the week. We're harvesting so that we could put some away for the winter time, because we don't have access to fresh food in the winter. So you do see subsistence users harvest and they'll consume more than what you would just get at the store, because they're trying to pack up for their annual take. We take a whole moose, we take 5 deer per person, because that's going to feed us for the whole year until next season. And I don't know if Michael has anything to add to that.
Yeah, just for the Seldovia area, years and years ago when we first moved here, my family first moved here, we didn't have to travel very far to get things. The clams were plentiful, pretty close to town. You could go across the bay and harvest clams. Salmon, we had lots of salmon, tons of herring. Used to be fun to sit at the dock here or one of the old docks and fish for herring, kind of jig for them, or go out to the outside beach and catch herring as they went through the slough there. And the berries, we had a hill here called Blueberry Hill, and that was great when we were kids in the fall to go pick on Blueberry Hill. And so it's a lot of these things have changed over time here in the Seldovia area. We had quite a collapse in the mid 80s. The clams went away, shrimp, crab, salmon numbers dropped, herring almost disappeared completely. It was pretty bad. The clams are making a little bit of a comeback, not much, but everything else is still pretty down in numbers. So we are having to travel further now. From when we used to be able to go out front here and harvest the halibut, you have to travel a bit further down towards the Port Graham and Wallach area to harvest those now. It's the berries have suffered over the years with moths and things like that, and it's been there was actually a berry kitchen here that the tribe ran, and they actually had to close that up because the berries went away, and there was just barely enough for people to harvest for themselves. So it's been, nice. The probably last 4 or 5 years, I guess there's been some bounce back of the berries. Definitely not in the numbers we used to see, or the size even that we used to see here. So it's, we do try and can up as much salmon and smoked salmon, and make sure we try and get everything in the freezer that we can. It's definitely what gets us through the winter. About December, you start dragging the salt fish out of the buckets, and soaking those out and having pickled fish, because that just seems to, about December seems to be about the best pickled fish time. So I guess that's kind of what I have there, and can always add more later.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael and Raven. Appreciate both of those insights. And I always love hearing stories and just about, what people are out there doing. So I did want to just mention a couple of other historical events that have really impacted our region as well. The one is the 1964 earthquake. Our region is not unfamiliar with tsunamis, although this was not a landslide-generated tsunami. The 1964 earthquake was a 9.2 scale earthquake that really impacted our region. This is an intensity map from the USGS website, and several of our communities were really heavily damaged in this, including Chugach, which actually was pretty much the infrastructure was completely destroyed, and they relocated to an entirely new island about 20 years later. Valdez was also really heavily impacted by this earthquake. So I just wanted to mention that there is a strong memory of this event that is still that still exists in the region. And then exactly 25 years later, after the Exxon, or after the 1964 earthquake, the Exxon Valdez oil spill impacted our region and our communities. This is a map from the oil spill, the report that showed where oiling occurred and when the oil reached those areas on the days after the spill. And this has had just, this is one of the things that really, really impacted people's ability to go out and harvest subsistence foods and practice traditional activities. It also really impacted commercial fishing for a few years that had some significant economic blows in our communities. And even today, there's still oil left on the beaches. You can dig down about a foot or so on the beaches, and you'll still find residual oil. And then I actually believe, I wanted to go ahead and turn it over to Raven and Michael as well to talk, if you want to share anything about the oil spill and the aftermath.
Yeah, and I just want to make note to what Steph said in the chat about new plants and animals. There's, always concern for non-native species. And I think there's a few organizations that have a really good handle on that. Chugach Region, the Copper River Watershed group, they deal with a lot of that. But for subsistence related, we actually brought animals in here. We brought moose and deer to the region. Moose were brought in the 40s, and deer were brought in a couple times. It was the 1930s and then again in the 50s and 60s for subsistence. They actually are not native to this area, just for fun facts for everybody online. And as for the oil spill, I'm what they call a post-Exxon baby. I happened to come along right after this had happened, and I could tell you the story probably as clear and in detail as if somebody was there. I've heard it so often. It's been a huge part of my life. And as you can see, here's some pictures that Cirque owns the rights to, of our tribal members out there cleaning up the oil. You could see that they're using their bare hands, no PPE. It not only had an environmental impact, but a human impact. A lot of, as you can see, a lot of our tribal members were out there firsthand cleaning it up, and they say that there's a lot of links to health issues later on. This completely wiped out our subsistence resources, and we're still seeing the effects of it today. Like Erin had said, we are seeing comebacks with some species, others are not. It completely decimated our herring fishery, which was both subsistence and economic impact. Many families lost millions of dollars worth of permits and boat gear and things like that went along with herring fishing. Same with salmon fishing. You are seeing a comeback now, but and same with subsistence resources. We lost a lot of knowledge that went along with subsisting from the ocean. When my great-grandmother was alive, she would not let us eat clams that we found on the beach. She told us to toss them because she was afraid of the oil. It was just still so prominent to her, even though years have passed and people were consuming them. She didn't want us to get sick. And so, we lost that knowledge of subsisting on clams and hunting marine mammals, and we couldn't eat marine mammals for a very long time, and they're still seeing effects of the oil in them today. There's traces of toxins in those species and causing weakened immune systems. And same with our orca population, which isn't a subsistence population, but it decimated one of our main orca populations, and we are not seeing a comeback. They're about to go extinct. And so why we put this in here and why we put the earthquake in here is to show that our region, I like to say, is resilient because we've had to be. We've had so many disasters that have happened in our pristine area. That the earthquake was one thing that, shifted the land. It brought places up. It lifted the land. It sunk the land. But this, then again, so many years later, just has been one thing after another. And now we're dealing with the effects of climate change and possibly this landslide. And it's really, I can't explain to you how important it is to make sure that something of this magnitude doesn't decimate subsistence, because it's just coming back again. And so that's why it's so important that we have these types of meetings and conversations and put, protections and placeholders up so things don't get as bad as this. I don't know if Michael has anything to add.
Yeah, it was pretty devastating when we're in school and they wheeled in the little TV and turn the TV on. We could see the news of the Exxon, and the community came together and formed a group, the Seldovia oil spill response team. But there was a group of people that just went to town, building these booms by hand because there were no resources, and they knew the oil was going to come here, at some point. And so, they worked day and night to get these booms built. The school kids, we went down and helped build them down here on the beach, and it was quite something to see the community come together the way it did, and get these booms out on the water. There was people that would man the booms, daily and keep them clean, from debris that would float around. And then when the oil, we had moose balls. I don't remember anything much bigger than like a softball size that I saw on the beaches here in the Seldovia area. But I think there were some other folks that did see some more significant size oil around the area. And the boats that were coming back from working around the corner, we had a boat cleaning station here, and like these big clear plastic bags that you see in the picture here, our boat cleaning station was down here on the ferry dock, and there'd be a pile of these bags, and inside the bags you could see the dead animals that they had just completely been soaked in oil. It was just brown and nasty, and you could see the sea otters and the birds in there. And a barge would come in and pick all that stuff up after a while, and then the boats would get pressure washed and cleaned from top to bottom here at the ferry dock before they were allowed to leave and go to Homer or wherever they were headed off to. And it was all summer of doing that. A lot of people worked around the corner, on the beaches, helping clean up. And there was Martech and Vico were, I think, the two companies that were in here in Seldovia working the oil spill. So it was, I think around the corner of Port Ramnan-Wallach, they until recently they really weren't eating the subsistence foods that they used to eat because they were scared of the potential hazards of their food being poisoned from the oil spill still. So it is a long lasting trauma for people, unfortunately.
Thanks so much for sharing that and driving home how much this impacted our region. And I think, it goes to show, like Raven was saying, that people in this region have been resilient because we've been forced to be resilient. But it goes back to subsistence foods, and that traditional way of life is incredibly important. And whether it's an oil spill or a tsunami, preserving those activities, the ability to go out and do those activities is one of the main goals of SIRC, and something that is incredibly important to the tribes that we serve. Let's see. Now I'm having trouble. There we go. So I wanted to just really quickly show the land and the region again. And I have circled the red circle in this slide is where Barry Arm is relative to the communities that we're talking about. And I also stuck the star that's here is Whittier, which is the closest community to that Barry Arm potential landslide area. It's not a community that SIRC serves, but there is a small community there as well. However, this area is a place that that SIRC tribal members and community members will go to visit both for work and for play. So I'm going to try to hurry it up because I know we're kind of running out of time, but just give a 30,000 foot overview of some of the climate impacts that are affecting our region. A lot of this data is from the Chugach National Forest Vulnerability Assessment that was published in 2017. So some of it is a little bit older science-wise, but it's a great showcase or snapshot of kind of what could happen. I will say the A1B scenarios that you see here are kind of, if you're more familiar with RCPs like I am, that's a mid-range scenario about the equivalent of RCP 6.0. So this shows temperature or projected temperature changes in our region in January and July under kind of a mid-range climate change scenario. So you can see that overall we're getting warmer. And significantly, there's areas, a lot of areas in our region that are going to be shifting in winter from an average temperature that's below freezing to an average temperature that's above freezing. And so that can have significant impacts on precipitation and the hydrological cycles in our area. Another kind of impact from climate change is changing freeze and thaw cycles. So this is an A2 scenario. I couldn't find, well, it was just, this is kind of done for ease of being able to stick this in this presentation. So an A2 scenario is more like an RCP 8.5 scenario. So a larger, a really high level of emissions potentially. But you can see in this that in a lot of areas, the freeze date is moving later and later, and the thaw date is moving earlier and earlier. So we're not only are we having warmer winters, but we're also in several areas or several parts of our region likely to have shorter winters. And this obviously has impacts on precipitation. Both, warmer temperatures can hold more water, and so we're likely to see an increase in a lot of areas of precipitation, although there is some evidence of drought and drying out happening on the Kenai Peninsula over on the western, a little bit west of our region, kind of here from Homer and up to Kenai and Soldotna. We're also seeing, as you can see on this right-hand chart, a shift from more winter precipitation falling as snow today to more falling as rain in the future. And then glaciers and hydrology as well are likely to be impacted. This figure on the left shows some of the glaciers in Chugach National Forest that have been surveyed. And there is some glacier or some advancing of glaciers that they have recorded on these, but you can also see that there is quite a bit of loss as well in some areas. And then the map on the right just looks at the hydrologic unit codes, or the hydrologic units, and how they're dominated by snow or rain or transitional, and how that's going to change over time. And as you can see, a lot of our low-lying areas seem to be, hydrological units seem to be changing from this snow dominant to transitional or clear water dominant areas. And very, very brief overview of our region. As I mentioned, we have 7 communities that we serve. This is just data that was taken straight from the 2020 census data. So I will say that I don't know, in some cases, I know there are some inaccuracies here. For example, we know in Cordova, Native Village of Eyak has about 600 tribal members that live there, and the census only counted about 400 people who were of American Indian or Alaska Native descent. So kind of taking this with a grain of salt, because once you get into these very small communities, some of the projections and the statistics can kind of give a little bit interesting answers. But overall, we have a very varied region. We've got 7 communities in total that we serve. 5 of those communities are off the road system and require either a boat or plane transportation to get there. Those communities are Nanwalek, Port Graham, Chinika, Titlik, and Cordova. And those communities are also our federally recognized tribes. Seward, the Katuchik tribe in Seward, and the Valdez Native tribe in Valdez do not yet have federal recognition, although they are fighting for that and have been for decades. Our communities also range greatly in size. Our smallest community is Chinika, which has about 60 people, and all the way up to Valdez, which has almost 4,000 people. And and as you can also see, there's a huge range as far as the median household income in each of our communities, as well as many of the other demographic metrics that are tracked. Really quickly to talk about Cordova, I just wanted to highlight some of the industries that people work in there. Agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting is huge. Cordova is the 13th largest commercial fishing port in the US as far as commercial landings go. So commercial fishing is a huge industry there. And then a lot of the other employment centers around the fishing industry in Cordova. Subsistence wise, people from Cordova tend to travel a lot of far distances to harvest subsistence. This is data from a 2014 study done by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game that captures a screenshot of 1 year of subsistence harvest and where people traveled. So this shows all of harvest locations for all resources. And then on the left, you can see the percentage of households in that community that said that they harvested resources. So these are some of the most widely used resources in Cordova. And salmon, as you can see, are very important: berries, moose, deer. And this is from ADF&G data as well, but this shows subsistence harvest by edible weight. So how much food are people getting from different subsistence resources? And this does change it up a little bit, although fewer people reported using moose. Moose is about 25% of the wild harvest in Cordova. So that's kind of the difference between this and the chart I showed before. And this is a picture of, or this shows the commercial fishing fleet and commercial fishing permits that were held in Cordova. I know it's impossible to read. I have not yet figured out how to zoom in and actually show the data very well, but I mostly wanted to show this image to show how important the commercial fishing industry is in Cordova. And you can see a wide variety of permits held by Cordova fishermen. And also then I wanted to hand it over to Raven to talk a little bit about Cordova specifically.
Yeah, I kind of spoke a little bit about Cordova in the beginning, but as you can see, our community is, I like to say, nestled between Eyak Lake and Orca Inlet, and we really just have access in all ways out of there. So we have the road, we have 4 roads, and they both go on either sides of the mountains. So you have the community kind of in the middle. So you have what we call Orca, which is about 3 miles towards up into Nelson Bay area. They are working on expanding that road up to Shepherd Point, which is that furthest point up a little bit further. Yeah, there. That's Shepherd Point, and soon to have an oil spill response facility owned by the tribe there. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but it's a huge project with federal funds. We're actually breaking the record for a lot of indigenous tribes. We're going to be the first tribe to own highway or a road, and also it's the longest owned tribally road, so that's really exciting. Then you have Power Creek, which is going up north along Eyak Lake, and that goes to one of our hydro plants that provides us electricity for the community. And then there is on the lower end of the lake going out west or east, sorry, is the what we call out the road, the Copper River Highway, and that used to go out to Child's Glacier, but now it ends at 36 Mile where the bridge is broken. There's lots of subsistence activities that happen out there. You go through several different terrains, lots of different side roads and trails. And then on the lower left side, there is White Shed Road that goes out to Hartney Bay. And so those are our ways of accessing via road. And then, of course, you see the many boats in the harbor. Many of us go out and harvest outside. If you see on the top left side of the camera or the picture, there's that's going out to Orca Bay, and that's where the majority of people go out for other side, yeah, for subsistence, for clamming and things like that. And then where you can't see behind the camera is the Copper River Delta, or going out to the Copper River Delta, the islands. There's a lot of subsistence, bird hunting, fishing out there. And then there's just some other pictures of the community. And then the middle one is Eoc Lake. And then there's at the bottom, that's our big pink salmon run out at Hartney Bay.
Awesome, thanks, Raven. So I've got similar info for our other communities, but I think for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over a lot of that. But if there's any community that anyone wants me to pause on, I am happy to do that. But Titlik, here's to Titlik, they use it everywhere, basically. Commercial fishing, Chiniga, Port Graham, Nanwalek, and Seldovia, I will talk a little bit about as well. So Seldovia is across the bay. It is not one of the communities that CERC serves, but we work very closely with them because they are kind of in the region that Port Graham and Nanwalek also traditionally have used and accessed. So industry-wise, again, there's a lot of transportation, public administration, and services in the community. Here is a map of where people have reported harvesting in 2014. And you can also see that blueberries, like Michael was talking about Blueberry Hill, blueberries are very widely utilized, and also a lot of fish and salmon and clams and moose. By weight, halibut provide the most wild food. And I don't have any commercial harvest data for Seldovia because I have not run that data yet, but I was going to hand it over to Michael to talk a little bit about Seldovia.
Right. As through this picture in there, I thought it was kind of a good representation of what the waterfront there in Seldovia. There used to be 3 docks in this picture here. When I was a kid, there was the Anderson dock, kind of in the middle between the breakwater and the city dock there, and then just inside the city dock to the right was the Wakefield dock, the cannery. And there was a cannery going on and all kinds of fishing, and it was when we moved here, there was 1,100 people. It was kind of a booming community. There was fishing going on, there was logging going on, lots of people. In the mid 80s, that all kind of went away. So we don't have those resources that we used to have. There's been many different thoughts on why that stuff went away. And when I was working for the Seldovia Village Tribe, we never did really pin anything down. We did different studies on clams and did some drift card data and just different projects, benthic projects in the bay, and it was a lot of work being done there. But it's been a lot of boom or bust. It seems for the Seldovia area with fishing or mining or logging going on. So it's, right now it's tourism. You don't see boats in the harbor like you used to. There used to be a lot of fishing boats year round. Now there's only a couple fishing boats, and the harbor's almost empty. In the summertime, it'll be a lot of people with their summer boats coming in and filling the stalls. So it's quite a different place from what it used to be. But it's the people have definitely persevered over time to continue to live here. It's and yeah, I don't know what else you might want to know, but happy to answer anything. This slide is just kind of boilerplate information of Seldovia. And there used to be a salmon trap right outside the bay here. That was kind of cool. I never did get to go wander around the area where that was at and see if there was still pieces and parts of buildings or boardwalks and things like that in there. But maybe Brad or Caleb and Kate have been in that area and seen any remainders of stuff there.
Yeah, I've never seen actually traces of that salmon trap. I've seen the old photos, but yeah, I haven't.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. So that's a little bit about Seldovia and Seward. I put Seward and Valdez kind of at the end of this because there's not similar data, especially about subsistence, as both of these communities are considered non-rural areas. But again, in the sake of time, I know that we ran really late, so I will just kind of show some quick snapshots of this. There is a lot of commercial fishing in these communities. But again, especially in Valdez, you can see after the oil spill, a huge drop off in the number of locally owned permits. And that is kind of the 30,000 foot overview of our region. Thank you guys so much for your attention and your questions. And we're happy to take any questions or pass it back over to you, Hig, to continue conversations.
Yeah, I'd love to have questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording